16 years ago, a magazine called The Utne Reader named me a visionary. Of course, I was flattered, but I also felt a bit foolish about it. I really didn't think I deserved it. It seemed arbitrary, and though I never said it aloud, I wondered whether it might be due to the scarcity of women in the sustainability world back then. What had my vision been? When Kenny first suggested the idea for Bioneers, and I agreed to help him produce it, I sensed that it was timely and important. I saw that it filled a niche in a way that no one else was addressing, in highlighting creative and exciting solutions to many of our most pressing challenges. When I listened to the speakers that Kenny had assembled that first year, my heart leapt at hearing their visions and stories. I knew that they were the community of leaders that I wanted to serve. I imagined then that I was supporting his vision. I sensed that we could help create connective tissue among previously separate people and projects. Over time, I saw how we could help connect a community of extraordinary thinkers and doers and spread their stories to inspire others to get involved, to help lead change for the good in their own ways and communities. From the outset, I felt that our communications and interactions needed to be guided by a relational intelligence so that everyone, people of all backgrounds, colors, ages, orientations, and approaches, would feel respected, seen, and included in this collaborative and co-creative dance of reinvention. It was clear that that had to be central to our mission. I also knew that this couldn't be just about assembling brilliant and strategic ideas and people. To be complete and most effective, what was becoming our shared vision needed to be as concerned with beauty, the sacred, and the heart as it was with truth and the mind. I knew we had to make the results of the emergence of women's leadership fully visible, and also achieve a balance of masculine and feminine energies in our work, or it would miss the mark. So I advocated for those values, and I'm thankful that they became woven into our fabric. But none of that really felt like my personal vision. They were ideas and feelings that were emerging in the larger culture that nearly all of us here have been birthing together. What I had begun seeing as Kenny's vision began to evolve into a shared vision that was a marriage of our sensibilities. So I'm glad that I learned to take a stand for what I valued, especially on behalf of a kind of wholeness that I perceived was possible and useful to contribute to the field, to collectively unearth a vision of how we might together transform how we live on Earth, with ourselves, and with each other. But I didn't think it was really visionary. All my life, I had imagined that vision beyond our eyes' capacity to see, that vision was something that descended from on high, that it involved some stroke of insight that came from outside ourselves, sort of like lightning, only less painful. This year, I've been through a far deeper journey of vision that's still unfolding. In January, I attended a retreat called a Winter Dreaming Ceremony. When I learned of a chance to be in the redwoods in the depth of winter, to journey deep inside my own experience, held by gentle, skillful, and loving hands, every cell in my body said yes. And there, in sync with the Earth's cycle of hibernation and dreaming, I discovered the dimensional creativity of darkness. Some of it involved laying in silence, in complete black, for several hours deep inside a kiva, covered in blankets. In pitch blackness, eyes open, we watched, listened, and attuned with our bodies, our inner sight, our intuition. To my surprise, rather than the void, I discovered that darkness is profoundly peaceful, creatively abundant, and full of life. And that turning inward in the depths of winter is exactly what this animal yearns for and is designed to do. I found that vision can be what you see in the dark. In our work with women leaders, I've seen how powerfully we can see and hear and reflect each other into flourishing, that often the act of seeing another's full magnificence and reflecting it to her honestly can help her to more fully see herself. We can call each other into healing and strength and greater leadership, not only with our voices and our listening, but also with our eyes, with our dreams and intuition, and with the insight of our inner vision. I've been thinking about this whole concept of vision when this spring I began to notice that my eyesight was getting worse. I had been diagnosed the year before with early-stage cataracts, and so I wasn't overly concerned. About 12 weeks ago, an MRI revealed a tumor behind my right eye. It was wrapped tightly around my optic nerve, and so it was rapidly diminishing my sight. Tests revealed that my right eye wasn't able to perceive color. A young doctor I consulted frightened me to the core. He said I'd need urgent surgery, which would involve drilling a hole in my skull in order to biopsy the mass to determine next treatment steps. He said my right eye's vision might be lost completely. He spoke of radioactive rods and long-term treatment options, depending on what the biopsy might reveal. He noted that the size and location of the tumor made it particularly difficult and dangerous. I drove home with my mom, deeply shaken, and shared my news with Kenny. He had recently connected with a college girlfriend he hadn't seen in 43 years, and had learned when they visited that she was an ophthalmic surgeon. Go no, right? He emailed her that night asking whether she might be willing to help. The next morning, I awoke pre-dawn in darkness. The first thing I heard was soft rain pattering on our roof, which is rare at night in New Mexico and always cause for celebration and gratitude in the desert. I realized that Kenny was sitting on the edge of our bed, his head in his hands, weeping. We held each other, riding a pure wave of emotion of our love, shock, and dread. I was thankful for how we were together, for our deep and mutual love. After weathering the twists and turns that come with any long marriage, then the sun broke over the horizon and a huge rainbow spread brilliantly across the sky. The moment was crystalline, magic, and filled with a sacredness I relate to as Gaia, or Mother Life. I knew that I would somehow make it through this visit to the underworld. Hours later, Kenny's ex signed on as my guardian angel. After extensive research, she identified 2 surgeons who had invented a surgery that, going up through my nose and using endoscopic technology, which is tiny video cameras, was able to remove the tumor in an outpatient procedure. It was confirmed to be benign. And though my optic nerve had been damaged, which meant that my right eye's vision might not fully recover, over time they believe that it will largely return. Returning home, I embarked on a journey of healing, learning to become an expert in my body's own needs. Since this strange science fiction surgery that I'd received left me with no visible scars, this became a very intimate interior endeavor. It asked me to focus all my vision inwardly, to listen intently, to address the invisible bruising, aching, and inflammation. For my inquisitive mind that has learned from Bioneers the power of story, the layers of metaphor and meaning just wouldn't quit. Here's an example. Might color symbolize emotion, the remarkable ways that our bodies have to communicate to us the truth of what we're feeling and experiencing? If so, might my loss of color vision correspond to my interest in learning about and conveying the value of emotions? Late last year, I began experiencing a rapid series of deaths of friends and mentors. Some were roughly my age and died quite suddenly. The physical disappearance of friends whose insights, voices, and love I had grown to rely upon is always a shock. I found that I had to adjust inwardly and learn to ask and listen for those beloved friends' guidance in a whole new way, relying instead upon my inner vision, voice, and listening. My life began to feel punctuated by duende, which is a Spanish notion that's linked to the flamenco tradition, and it insists that when you live with an awareness of death on your shoulder all the time, life becomes more vital, authentic, colorful, and immediate. This year, grief has washed over me without warning. I can't predict when or how it might arise. I'm coming to see loss as an ordinary part of my weather pattern, a necessary and part of my and natural part of my internal climate. When I accept grief or sorrow as they arise, they eventually pass. I now see how integrating those dark emotions into my life lends a richer spectrum to my experience. It gifts me with a sparkly vitality and immediacy of texture. Now my color vision is starting to return. It's elusive, but incrementally, subtly, and slowly, it's improving week by week. Time has become essential to my healing and reclaiming vision. I found I have no choice but to surrender to my body's own pacing and needs. There's no amount of ego, willpower, or clock time that can serve me in this process, any more than we can hasten a fruit to ripen or rush a flower to blossom. It seems like healing invariably takes more time than anyone anticipates, and so I'm being reshaped by patience and by watching and listening inwardly. Like water nourishes a landscape, if I slow down, I find I can go deeper. This shift in my inner pacing that's been needed to stay attuned to my healing needs is helping me to come home to my body. Another of the gifts of this underworld journey is discovering that healing my vision requires rest, and that rest is far more than a lack of activity. Like darkness, it's far more than the absence of its opposite. For me, rest seems to come in many flavors and textures. Often, my body craves solitude and stillness, and sometimes communing with a dog, a tree, or a cup of tea. Other times, it savors emptiness and the invitation to welcome whatever comes. If the Tao describes life as a complement of yin and yang, perhaps rest is the undervalued yin of our energetic wholeness. I sometimes think of it as the opposite of violence and as cultivating compassion. So having now been initiated into the tribe of people who have sensed my physical limits and mortality, my compassion has expanded exponentially. To focus on healing my vision, I'm having to alter my relationship to time and activity. I'm not the first to discover these truths. As Thomas Merton wrote many decades ago, in a time when life's pace was slower, the rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. Sound familiar? The frenzy of our activism, he wrote, neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful. Since Bioneers is an opportunity to see, hear, and call in the world we want, I'll close with an invocation to offer in gratitude my current vision for the world I want. As we embark on this time of imagining, may we practice surrendering to Mother Life's own rhythms and pacing for healing and becoming more whole. May we practice humbly listening, sensing, and watching for what our own bodies and each other's and the Earth's know and want and need. And may we become better at actively seeing each other with our inner eyes, and so collectively envision and reflect each other and our institutions, cultures, and homelands into fullness, fruition, and flourishing. May we give ourselves wholeheartedly to loving, tending, and celebrating all of our earth relations, so that our children's children might still know and see whales, elephants, bears, and other large wild mammals, as well as their wilderness savannas, ridges, rivers, deltas, and ocean homes. May we practice standing together and linking across difference, nourished and strengthened by our collective and diverse visions, to gently but perseveringly surround and transform our systems of inequity, rising up together into a movement that can stand for justice, love, and health for our Mother Earth and all our co-inhabitants. Amen, Awomen, Aho. Thank you.